This video is going to serve as a warning both to police and to vloggers or auditors when the vloggers are out in public, filming in public, because there are very fine lines between what the police should and shouldn't do and what the vloggers should and shouldn't do. So welcome back, I'm the Black Belt Barrister, helping you to understand law, and in this video, a warning about vlogging. So I was prompted to make this video after reading that Auditing Britain was paid £1,500 in an out-of-court settlement by West Mercia Police without any admission of liability after he was searched for filming a police station. Now, whether you love it or hate it, the idea of filming and vlogging and auditing, if you will, different places and buildings of national interest, there are relatively clear lines as to what the police can and cannot do and what the vloggers can and cannot do. But there are some more blurred lines as to what the police shouldn't do and what the vloggers shouldn't do. So the very simple starting point is this: if you are out in public, there is no general prohibition on filming and vlogging and, as some call it, auditing, whether that be people, buildings, or whatever. Now, although the Court of Appeal has made it clear that all of the circumstances will be considered when considering the privacy issues of filming in public, and police guidelines have made it clear that vloggers have a general freedom to do this and should not be routinely questioned and certainly shouldn't be routinely searched, there are, as I said, some lines to stick to. Now, one of the first interactions between police and any member of the public is to ascertain name, address, date of birth, for the purposes of identifying that individual. But as I've explained in other videos, the police can only require you to provide this information if they suspect that you are engaged in antisocial behaviour, or you've been involved in a crime, or about to commit a crime, or there's a warrant for your arrest, or something like this. There has to be a very valid reason. But the one that interests me for the purposes of this video are where there are somewhat clear lines and somewhat blurred lines to do with antisocial behaviour. Now, interestingly, there was a Home Office report in 2004. There may have been others since, but the one I'm referring to was from 2004, specifically in relation to antisocial behaviour, which is titled Defining and Measuring Antisocial Behaviour. And in it, there's an RDS study which talks about general definitions of a wide range of antisocial behaviour. Now, looking at some of these, they are very much more clear-cut than others. And doubtless, if you are caught doing or being involved in any of these things, it is clear-cut antisocial behaviour. You should expect to be asked for your details and quite probably arrested. Even some of those coming under the heading of nuisance behaviour, such as setting fires, inappropriate use of fireworks, climbing onto buildings. Things of this nature might be considered nuisance, therefore antisocial behaviour, and there are relatively clear lines for doing those things as well. However, the lines become a little bit blurred, in my view, when it comes to rowdy behaviour, which includes shouting and swearing. Not so much fighting, I think that's quite clear-cut antisocial behaviour. Drunken behaviour, I think, is fairly clear-cut, but the shouting and swearing, it depends on the level of shouting and swearing that's going on. And then the other heading of intimidation and harassment. Now, intimidation and harassment are fairly serious words, but then some of the things that might be considered intimidation or harassment might be verbal abuse, following people, pestering people, and so on. But when it comes to vloggers, the idea of pestering people, now, one might be accused of pestering someone just because they are walking around filming, and then there's some interaction. But then one might look at how that interaction started in the first place. If, for example, a vlogger is just filming in public, filming a building out of interest, and someone else comes up to them and they instigate the interaction and start questioning them, why are you here, what are you doing, don't film this place, and all of these kind of things, then it might be interpreted by onlookers that the vlogger is the one that is pestering people by being there and filming and vlogging in the first place. Some might go on to say that that amounts to verbal abuse when there's a heated conversation between them. But a heated conversation doesn't necessarily amount to harassment. And as the court said in the case of Crown and N of 2016, in particular paragraph 32 of the judgment, the court said many actions that cause alarm or distress will not amount to harassment, hence the requirement well established in authority that the conduct must also be oppressive. So in other words, some of these interactions may cause somebody alarm, simply meaning they're upset by the interaction. And some actions may cause distress. Again, the person might be distressed by the conversation because it's not a conversation they wanted to have. But that does not necessarily mean that these things amount to harassment. Hence, as the court put it, the well-established authority that this conduct must also be oppressive to amount to harassment. So there is a little bit of a blurred line, in my view, between what is harassment, intimidation, antisocial behaviour, and what might give the police grounds to require your name, address, date of birth in order to identify you. But my usual advice, now this is not advice, but my usual advice in these situations is to stay on the side of caution. So if you are in that situation and you are having this exchange, which becomes heated, it's very important to know what your rights are if you are spoken to the police. And if you are being asked for your details because of antisocial behaviour or because of any other suspicion of your involvement in an offence, the police are required to tell you so, and that is why they require your details. Searching you requires other grounds, and in many cases it will not be lawful, and there may be a civil suit to follow if they've searched you unlawfully. So in all of these cases, I always suggest that you maintain a polite interaction, even if the other person is upset by the interaction because they don't like you filming in public. But also be mindful that the courts, if it went that far, might consider whether there was a reasonable expectation of privacy, which is relatively hard to establish in a public setting, but it won't be impossible, and there will be cases where there will be an expectation of privacy, and it might cause you difficulty if you ended up in court for such things. So anyone that's watching that is involved in this from either side of the fence, whether you are part of the police service or community support service, or whether you are a vlogger, it's important that you understand where these lines are and that your interactions stay on the right side of the line for you. Because as someone once put it, which I find really interesting, in respect of one of Charlie Veitch's videos, someone said, "I don't like what Charlie Veitch does because he goes around with a camera filming things and commenting about what's happening." Now, you know that I don't specifically endorse anything, I just give my views on this channel, but that comment was particularly interesting because I thought, well, that is exactly what news companies do. They might do it slightly differently, but that is exactly what a news company does. They go around filming things and then they comment on what's happening. Even when celebrities are photographed, when they are trying to disguise themselves so they can go out for some private shopping, they still get photographed and splashed in the news to say, this person is out in disguise, going out shopping to try to remain anonymous. And ironically, it's splashed over the front pages. So is there a reasonable expectation of privacy in those cases because they've tried to cover themselves up? Or do they lose that expectation of privacy because they are a public figure? Well, as I said, it's going to depend on the circumstances. Walking around in public is one thing, but there will be some cases when they have that expectation. So please like this video if you find these discussions useful and you want to keep them coming. Remember to subscribe because we're almost at 100,000 subscribers and I have you all to thank. And in the meantime, thank you for watching.